Okay, everybody, have a seat, and we will start the next panel. Thank you for being prompt almost to the minute. Elizabeth Hagan will be moderating this panel, and I'll give you her bio is on the website, but I'll give you a very brief just bio of her. Elizabeth is Charlestonian. She's actually from Charlottean. But she is a very good friend of mine and Virginia, my wife's, and we have known Elizabeth and Maybank for a long time. Elizabeth is the Lowcountry Open Land Trust and was formerly the chairman of the South Carolina Department of Environmental Quality Board and has played many roles in environmental conservation over the last 25 years, if you can believe it. She's going to be moderating, and thank you, Elizabeth, for doing that.
Great, thanks, Dana. And I want to start out by just saying happy 25th anniversary. As Dana said, we're good friends, and we're also colleagues. I'd call us almost twins, if not Siamese twins, because the beginning of the Coastal Conservation League happened at the same time as the beginning of the Lowcountry Open Land Trust, and many of you in this room were at the beginning of both of these organizations. And Dana and I actually shared an office, and that was in the old days. I think he had 2 staff, and it was just me, and 2 Scotch tightwad conservationists would fight over when we would cut on the air conditioning and whether it was set at 85 or 90. Those were the good old days back in '89. But, so this is a poignant day to celebrate the 25th anniversary, and I think a number of us who've been in the front lines of conservation in this state are at a crossroads in our organizations and as individually and as a movement together. As you all know, we really do work collaboratively here in the Lowcountry. It's not in many places across the country that you find conservation organizations really working together, having fun doing it, and really making an impact. And I think that's a hallmark here, and that's not going to change going forward. But we have a real need and a real opportunity to reassess, to reevaluate, and to confront some of the challenges that we find ourselves in. We're going to talk about that in this next panel. We're moving from the global, from the last panel, to more local in the new community, discussing sustainability, resilience, and equity. Those are key components of a sustainable community. So I look forward to this discussion today. As Dana said, I'm a facilitator, I'm not a pontificator, so I'm not going to speak anymore about this. I'm going to give the time that is due to our distinguished speakers. We're going to follow a similar format to what Dana had done before, but we'll vary it a little bit. We've got 3 speakers right here. We've got Steve Nicholas, who's going to share his experiences in Seattle. He's been in the forefront of sustainability and climate action at both the national and regional levels. Then we've got Will Rapp, who's going to share his Vermont experiences that have been literally groundbreaking in his leadership, harnessing creative, social, environmental, and economic change through the marketplace and enterprises. And then you'll hear from Judy Wicks, whose Philadelphia experience is an example of locality building broad spectrum sustainability that we talked about at the macro level earlier. So what I'm going to do is briefly introduce a little something about each one of them, let them speak, and they will each speak for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we're going to let them have an exchange between themselves and open it up for general Q&A. But starting off, Steve Nicholas, right here to my left, is Vice President for the Institute of Sustainable Communities for Climate and Environmental Programs. He's done that since 2008 in Seattle, Washington, and prior to that, he was the City of Seattle's Officer of Sustainability and Environment for 8 years. He is an award winner from the American Government Award, Innovations in American Government Award in 2007, and he co-authored Seattle's first ever climate action plan, which spurred the U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement and has had lasting impacts not so lasting anymore, but back then, we're going to get that back. But a huge impact in terms of climate action plans. In the middle, you see Will Rapp, who is the founder and past chairman of the Intervale Center, which is a nonprofit organization in Burlington, Vermont, developing farm and land-based enterprises that generate economic and social opportunity while protecting the natural resources. He's also the founder and chairman of that Vermont-based Gardener's Supply Company, which is among the world's largest online and catalog gardening suppliers and has won national recognition for its products and services and its socially responsible business practices. And at the end, but certainly not last, is Judy Wicks, who's an author and a sustainable business leader and speaker. She founded Bally, which we are all very familiar with, and of which Lowcountry Local First is a member. She's also a founder of Philadelphia's iconic White Dog Cafe, which developed a national reputation for environmental stewardship, community engagement, and leadership in the local food movement. She has a book you'll probably be interested in purchasing that has just been published called, it's her memoir, Good Morning, Beautiful Business, The Unexpected Journey of an Activist, Entrepreneur, and Local Economy Pioneer. So that's a very abbreviated bio of each of these, and I'm going to let them go ahead and begin talking. Steve, if you want to go ahead.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And, you know, it sounds very trite to say that it's an honor to be here, but I really do feel that way. I mean, to be given the opportunity to play hopefully some small role in helping an already terrific organization kind of shape its future is a big honor for me. And to be able to share the podium with not only my fellow panelists, Will and Judy, but Gus and David, and really your whole terrific lineup is really a great honor for me, and I very much appreciate the opportunity. It's also kind of a scary one for me. I'm going to come clean on that. You know, I'm parachuting in. It's my first time ever stepping foot in South Carolina, and so I kind of have the feeling, you know, what do I really know? And what can I bring of value? So I just want to come clean and be transparent about the perils of parachuting in. But what I'm going to try to do against that backdrop is a couple things. One is I'm going to offer just a few, don't have much time, a few examples of things that I'm seeing happening across the country that I think may be inspiring, informative, instructive, somehow useful to you. I'm actually not going to draw from my Seattle experience much for many reasons, one of which is that my former boss, the great former mayor of Seattle, Greg Nichols, is speaking at lunch, and I'm sure he'll reflect on some of those stories himself. But my work more recently in the last 5 years or so has actually been working with communities like yours all over the country, trying to help them. Our tagline is advance and accelerate local solutions to global challenges like climate disruption and sustainable development. And I also have just completed a book that it's due out in September with two other authors from Island Press called A Guide to Greening Cities. And so I'm going to draw more from those experiences. And I only have time for a couple, maybe 3 examples. They'll be real quick. And then what I'm going to try to do in my wrap-up is just distill out some of my own reflections on those examples and others, and a couple of potential key ingredients to the development of these so-called new communities. Really offer that up to you as food for thought. That's my goal, my modest goal after my caveat/confession about the perils of parachuting in. So the first story is coming to you from a little bit further south. The Southeast Florida Climate Compact, it's called. Just out of curiosity, how many people in the room have heard of this? Great, I get to tell a story most of you haven't heard yet. This is, to me, a very fascinating story. And it has its origins in a lobbying excursion that city and county officials from Southeast Florida took to Capitol Hill, the U.S. Capitol, back in, I think it was 1997 or so. And they were lobbying not only their congressional delegations, but others for help. They were trying to get them to take climate disruption seriously, and they were trying to get more support to their highly vulnerable, probably one of the most vulnerable parts of the country, as your region is, to various climate impacts, notably sea level rise. And they had a really hard realization when they were comparing notes as they were walking in and out of congresspersons' offices, that they were not on the same page, quite literally. For example, they realized they all were bringing different maps of the expected sea level rise to different congresspersons, even though they shared the shoreline. And so they realized, boy, we are really wasting some time, we're wasting some money, we're slowing ourselves down. To put it more positively, if we work together, we could probably really make some things happen. And so they created this compact. And they basically, they didn't have an institutional mechanism for working together across 4 counties, so they just invented one. They just invented this compact, a written document, and I'm talking about 4 highly urbanized counties that represent a third of the population of the state and a third of the economic output of the state. So it's a powerful group of counties, 2 run by Republicans, 2 run by Democrats, and they just said, you know what, we're going to work together on this. And they drafted this compact, and they all signed it, and each of the 4 county commissions actually officially legislatively adopted it, and they're doing it. And 3 years later, they created a joint regional climate action plan for those 4 counties, covers both mitigation and adaptation. In other words, looking both at reducing their contribution to global warming pollution, as well as how to bolster their resilience as a 4-county region. And they've had a lot of success already in terms of attracting federal grants that they likely would not have otherwise attracted when they were acting separately, alone, and also affecting some very important state legislation. So I think a really interesting example of one aspect of what I think we mean when we talk about new community development. The second story comes from out west, the Denver region. And the impetus for this story actually is the increase in both the frequency and the intensity of the wildfires that they're experiencing all over the place and all over the West, as you know, but in particular in the watersheds that supply the Denver metropolitan area, 1.3 million residents there, with their water. So the Hayman fire in particular in 2002, 20 days it lasted, 140,000 acres burned to the ground, 6 people lost their lives, 132 homes were burned down, and get these numbers. $40 million spent fighting the fire by the federal government, $40 million just in property losses, and then another $30 million spent by the Denver Water Department to do the restoration necessary to bring their water supply back up to snuff in terms of its supply and healthiness. So they started running those numbers and saying, we got to do things differently. So they created the Forest to Faucets partnership. Again, show of hands, how many people have heard of this? Okay, great, I'm hitting 2 for 2. This is fascinating to me, and again, it's indicative of the kinds of work I think we need to be doing to create these new communities. Denver Water, it's a regional agency, they serve 1.3 million people in the urban area. They partnered with, believe it or not, the U.S. Forest Service, which has responsibility for managing these forests that are affected by the pine beetle infestations and the hotter, drier, longer summers. And they have responsibility for dealing with this. And so they partnered, they put together a $33 million fund. Half of it's coming from the U.S. Forest Service, half of it's coming from Denver Water, $27 a household a year, coming from urban water residents, urban water consumers, to pay for better forest management in the hinterlands, up in the ecosystem from which those services are provided to the city. So again, I think another very fascinating example of the directions in which we all need to be heading. And then I'm going to skip this one for time's sake, but if you want to get back into it, I'm going to skip it because it's somewhat similar to the work that you all are doing here with Grow Food Carolina. But if people want to get into it in Q&A, we can. And I do wonder whether there's an opportunity there, if you're not doing it already, for this region to be twinning with that region. I'm talking about the Asheville region now, western North Carolina, on some of the stuff you're working to doing to transform your agricultural industry. But I'm going to skip that one and go to this third and final one, which comes from just slightly north of here, city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. And what they're doing, they have a neighborhood and business services department within Charlotte. And they have underway, in partnership with the city of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, University of North Carolina, there's a nonprofit there called Sustain Charlotte, Duke Energy is involved. So it's a multi-sectoral partnership that's all about really empowering their neighborhoods through a lot better information and some direct resources to pursue sustainability at that scale. And I find it quite fascinating. So a few of the key elements of this. First of all, they have this neighborhood quality of life dashboard. So they are tracking 80 variables in 460 neighborhoods, every neighborhood in Mecklenburg County. And they are, and these are metrics related not just to environmental quality, but social health and economic vitality as well. So the whole triple bottom line, sustainable community development approach. And they're doing it as of recently. This changed in just last year in 2012 on a very, I've been on it. It's amazing. A very user-friendly, web-based, interactive platform that allows any resident or business in that county to go to this website and look at how they're doing against any of these 80 yardsticks, how they're doing against themselves in the past, how they're doing against other neighborhoods, you know, kind of tapping into that kind of human thing, that friendly competition you can catalyze across neighborhoods, and also looking at where they stand vis-a-vis the county as a whole, the average. And so that helps them also address some of the equity concerns they have. So it's just a terrific way of daylighting this information that helps the city and the county guide their policies and their resource allocation and their capital improvement investments, for example, as well as helping the neighborhoods themselves understand where they stand and what they might do, both alone and with the governments and their businesses to make things better. They also have been helping a variety of these neighborhoods create their own neighborhood-based sustainability visions and plans, using these data to help them determine what their priorities are. And then they have a neighborhood matching fund, which I'm proud to say is actually an idea stolen from the city of Seattle, which has had one for 15 or 20 years now. But it's a way for the government basically to grant, do matching grants to neighborhoods to address some of these concerns and see some of these opportunities that they're now much better able to identify because of this dashboard. So those are, I know it's real quick, those are just, you know, 3 tips of 3 icebergs, but I want to respect my time allotment, and I want to hear what others have to say, and I want to have a conversation. So I'm just going to now, from those 3 admittedly small examples, pull out 3 themes or observations. And these are really things that are really just kind of starting to germinate in my own mind, so they're not even half-baked. I'm going to call them 1/8 baked. But I thought they might be provocative for you, and we can have a conversation about them. One is this notion of collaborative governance. You know, I think we're all really facing the reality that none of us can do it alone, literally. You know, we've been saying that for years, but given the size and complexity of these challenges and given the current economy, nobody's got any money. I think that's really slapping us in the face. And I think it means, and this was a theme of this morning's panel, I noticed as well, we just have to figure out different ways to govern ourselves. And so this notion of collaborative governance, and by that I mean, how do we get to a place where it's more of a partnership between the government and the community, where we're sharing information, ideas, and resources to get stuff done. And I think all 3 of those examples I put forward to me are examples of trying to do that in some way. And so the idea or challenge I put forward to the CCL is, yeah, and I know you're already doing a lot of work that could easily be characterized as collaborative governance, but how do you be a force for that in this region? How can you really, as an organization, push for this much more collaborative approach we need here in the Lowcountry? Second, and these are all obviously related to each other, you know, David Orr calls it full spectrum sustainability. Gus Beth referred to it as the new environmentalism. For me, it's just actually getting back to the true notion of sustainable development. I mean, I've been in the movement, you know, for 25 years now, and it's been frustrating to me for most of those that for a lot of people, sustainability or sustainable development really has just meant they just think it's another phase or phrase for the environmental movement. They're still really just looking at that one pillar. When really what we need to be doing, and you all know this, is looking for those integrated solutions across environmental, economic, and social health. The great example from Oberlin that David just mentioned. And so, and I think we're starting to see this. I'm starting to see silos finally breaking down, triple bottom line approaches finally being taken, communities moving, you know, beyond false dichotomies like climate mitigation versus climate adaptation, or protecting the economy versus protecting the environment. I'm seeing that. One tiny little example that I really love is City of El Paso. About 6 months ago, they took their sustainability office, which like the one I ran in Seattle was mostly focused on environmental sustainability, and their economic development department, and they merged them. They just made them the same unit. And so now they're all thinking about, well, what does that mean, and how do these things fit together? So even little institutional tweaks like that, I think, can make a really big difference. So again, how can the CCL be a force for achieving these much more integrated solutions that we're all after? And then finally, I've been very influenced by the work of Eric Kleinenberg. He is a professor out of New York University. He did some research on the Chicago heat wave of 1995. I have to confess that I didn't read the whole book, but I've read synopses of it. And then he did a piece in the New Yorker recently called "Can We Climate-Proof Our Cities?" I really commend it to you. And it's really got me thinking. His point is, he looked at Chicago, and what he found was the main thing that distinguished an inner city neighborhood in Chicago from really getting hammered by that heat wave, in terms of like a lot of people in that neighborhood dying, versus not. Even in neighborhoods that were adjacent to each other, literally physically adjacent to each other, the key, social cohesion, knowing each other, street life, community-based institutions, either nonprofits or businesses that cared, that watched out for each other. And it's really got me thinking, all this talk right now of climate adaptation and resilience, most of it's about physical infrastructure when you think about it. Let's build a seawall, let's put houses on stilts, let's restore our shoreline, let's establish some cooling centers downtown, so that when it gets really hot, people will have a place to go. And those are, probably most of those things are necessary. But I think we're giving short shrift to this notion of social infrastructure, social cohesion, the capacity of place-based, community-based organizations, businesses, and nonprofits. And I think we need to invest more in how do we shore up that in a systematic and sustained way. And again, I put forward that as an idea / challenge for CCL, how you can be a force for building social infrastructure and resilience here in the Lowcountry. Obviously, that was very quick, and I grew up in New England, so I can talk very quickly, and I think I just exhibited that. But more details on all three of those little mini stories that I told, and probably 150 others, are on our website at www.sustainablecommunitiesleadershipacademy.org. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.